As everyone just gets settled, welcome, welcome. I'm just going to give it a minute whilst, I think everyone's connecting. So with these things, we never know how many people are going to show up live. I think there's lots of people who are signed up for the replay as well. So other people can just join as and when, and we'll keep the conversation flowing. But thank you to everyone who has arrived today. Cheryl and I are so excited to have this conversation with you today, because it's been brewing for a long time, hasn't it, Cheryl? It's something we've really wanted to talk about. But before we get into the depths of today, I think we'll just start with some introductions, because I know there's people who are coming from kind of Cheryl's world, Cheryl's community, some from mine, and we've got some new people as well, which is always brilliant. So if I get started, I am Emma Matthews, and really what brought me to the work is I had a long career in the financial services industry, and my story basically is that one day I just burnt out horrifically because I'd become this robot who, just neglected all of my needs, got wrapped up in the process, overgave. And that moment changed everything for me. That was the point that I realized how I'd been living wasn't sustainable and that something needed to change. So from the absolute lowest lows of thinking life is over and things are never going to be the same, it actually brought us to some amazing work. So Serena, do you mind going on mute? There we go, sorted out. So I was just saying, from that lowest low, it actually led to some amazing things. I set up my own business, ultimately trained as a coach, and really the work that I did to reconnect with my inner human is what actually brought me to Cheryl in a mastermind community about a year ago, and led to some of the conversations we've had about being a human in business that we'll definitely get to today. So Cheryl, that's probably enough from me. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. So I'm Cheryl Thompson. I'm a leadership and performance coach. Emma and I have got very similar, randomly and bizarrely and weirdly, we're starting to accept it a bit more now, aren't we, Emma, that we've got very similar journeys, and it almost feels like we were destined to meet each other. I was a high achiever. Performance is what mattered. Targets was what mattered. Being the best at everything. If there was the best in the room, I wanted to be better. And that wasn't just at work either. That was in my personal life. That was if I was walking to the shops, I wanted to get there faster than the person that was walking behind me. So I was always in competition constantly. And I don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it, because I always got to the shops faster. So I always won. But in doing that, you have to start to shut down parts of who you are to be able to keep succeeding, and you have to quiet and silence parts of you. And mostly that ended up being like a physical response. So Emma and I, if you ever follow what we do, we talk about the body's always talking to you. Well, it will keep talking if you're human, and if you're human, you will listen. But when you turn into a machine, you shut that down. And that's what I did for a good chunk of years. It earned me lots of money. It got me lots of promotions. It ended up taking me to catastrophic burnout, where I broke a collarbone and knocked myself unconscious, and actually largely just didn't recognize who I was. If I'd looked in the mirror, I didn't know who I was. I didn't have human connections, deep ones anyway. I had surface level ones that people thought they were close to me and thought they understood, but they didn't. So I was a real high performer, achieving everything that everybody wanted me to do, smashing everything, top of every league table going, and I was desperately unhappy and isolated and lonely. And that led to me making some changes. And one of the things, and this is how Emma and I talk about it all the time, you ignore your human basic needs, you disregard them, and you give yourself to everything and everybody around you. And that's when things aren't sustainable and when things aren't healthy. So that led me to doing some deep inner reflective work. And because something else I'll say as well is it wasn't the first time for me. Although I was happy and outwardly I had everything that people used to look and go, she travels everywhere first class, she's got the best shoes, she's got everything like that was outward materially, and I had loads of people around me. But I kept getting this thing where I was exhausted and disappointed in other people, disappointed in my managers, disappointed in my leaders, thinking I could do, they could have done more or better. And it just led into this cycle. And that's what made me think there's something going off here, because the same feelings keep coming up for me where I feel disappointed or let down in the world, or. And it was at that point that I thought, I've got to make some changes, because the common thing in all of this is me. And that's a hard conversation to have with yourself, because it's really easy to blame everyone around you. But the only person that forces you to ignore your body, the only person that forces you to go in when you're sick or tired or exhausted, is actually you. So it's a bit of a rude awakening. So that led me to the work. It led me to some psychology, to human behaviors, to coaching, to mentoring, to honest, courageous conversations. And that led me to leadership coaching and meeting the wonderful Emma in our mastermind. But the more I do this work, the more I realize that people deaden and quieten their human needs. They work like a machine. They operate. They don't live and breathe and embody everything they do. And that's got to change. And not just for us as individuals, for everybody that we influence around us. So that's how Emma and I are here today, because we know that there's so many people that need this human coaching, that need this reconnection to the body again. So that's me, here to help.
100%. And so the work I specialize in at the moment is predominantly burnout recovery. And I would love to get to the point that just burnout doesn't exist anymore. It's completely defeated, because people are checking in with their human. There's corporates that actually treat people as humans rather than kind of robots, bots in the machine. And then it wouldn't have to get to the point that people are kind of out of action for 12 months or lose all of their confidence in the process of coming back from that. And I think the thing that really worries me now is, from having been through burnout myself, once severely, once less severely, I'm acutely attuned to when people are on that path. I can kind of feel it, I can smell it, I can see it. And you only have to be on a commuter train to see just so many people who are in that robotic life of, I'm just surviving to the weekend, to the next day. And I'm increasingly finding my way with TikTok. Things keep going viral, and there is just such this outpouring of how I'm working at the moment is killing me on the inside. So the more I've had conversations with Cheryl about this, realized that we're seeing similar things and we both really care about it. We kind of thought, okay, so what can we do about this? What are the conversations that we can have around this? So in terms of why we're here today, it's the start for us, I think, of a much bigger conversation and a much bigger program of work around how we can actually safely embrace that human in business, and how that actually, if you think about it from a business perspective, it's a strategic advantage, because if your people are feeling like robots and not cared for, that shows in things for your clients as well. So Cheryl, I don't know if you want to add to that around why we're here.
For me, it's about community as well. It's about finding a network and a community. And there's nothing more valuable than finding a community outside of your current community. Lots of communities. Because then you're not dependent upon any one sort of source of, I'm going to say the word again, but community. And it's something that I found really valuable. And I think, you know, a lot of people that are going to be joining this or watching on the replay will have created a community, for example, on LinkedIn or like you say, on TikTok or any other social media. And I think that's wonderful. But again, it's almost like we're an audience of each other. What I would like is for us to start talking more and hearing each other and respecting each other. And because once you do that, and once you share where you've been, you realize that you've never actually been alone, but sometimes it can feel like you're so alone. And especially when you're in a particular function in a particular company, it can feel isolating. And that's how I felt when I was in burnout. I felt like everybody was almost just robotically doing what they had to do. And should I say when I was on the lead up to burnout, because burnout, I don't really remember it when it happened, but on the path to it, I just felt very lonely and very misunderstood and not heard. So for me, what we're looking to do here, Emma, is create a safe space, a community where people can talk about how they feel and can get solutions and answers. And sometimes just even go, God, this is doing my head in, and just let it go as well, because sometimes that's all you need, just to talk. But I also think, when I think back to my time, what I could have done with, I could have done with being able to talk. I could have done with being able to identify with somebody. But what I was desperately searching for back then, when I was in a business leadership role, was someone to show me how. And you get put on lots of training courses about how to deal with a subject matter expert thing. But what about being human in leadership? And when we talk about leadership, you don't have to have a team. You can be just you. But how do you become that person where you look at the person in front of you and you see them for the human that they are? Who teaches you that? I know it sounds like a really basic human need, like your parents should teach you that, or school should have taught you that by now. But then we get it conditioned out of us with having to be like fierce and, target driven and all these things, that we start to forget that we're just a bunch of people with needs and emotions. And how can we honor those things and be successful in the workplace? And I think there's loads of things we can do. We don't reach out for help for it. So that's why I would want to be here, to be able to help people understand that there's so many things they can learn, so many things they can understand, they can practice in a safe space, and they will become better because of it. And so will every single person around them, and not just at work, but in your personal life too. So that's why I'm here.
And I think, to add to that, a cycle that I see at the moment is there's so many people who just feel like they're spinning a million plates, and to spin that extra plate, they are taking time away from themselves. So we've just seen it at the moment, Cheryl, haven't we? We do some work with companies around boundaries, and actually at the point that you feel like you don't have time to do the work, have the conversations, is when you need it most. So if I think back to Emma in 2017, who was on the descent to burnout, what I really needed at that time was some real conversations with people who could kind of hold up the mirror to, if you continue working and living this way, this is what's going to happen. And a real structure around making sure I was supported and amongst people who had just decided not to live in that and work in that way. Because something amazing happens, I think, when you surround yourself with people who are living, working in a way that you want to be, somehow just through osmosis. That comes to you. Same way that we met, Cheryl, we deliberately put ourselves in an environment for a fixed amount of time where we would focus on the things that we wanted to be doing.
Energetically, I think that's huge. So we've talked about this before, haven't we, Emma? It's almost like envisioning your future self.
Yeah.
And once you can step into that and embody that future self of where you want to be, when you then look to where you currently are you living and breathing and behaving in a way that you need to achieve all the things that you're expecting to achieve? And if you're not, then you're never going to get where you want to get. You're going to stay stuck where you currently are. But so many people do that because their environment encourages them to stay where they are, because of the people either they're working with or even in their personal life. Well, I think it's the Jim Rohn, isn't it? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's actually a real, like, when when you're sort of forced into a work environment with people. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure we all love our colleagues and we all love the people we work with, in terms of if we're business owners. But sometimes you have to go and pick your environment if you want to be something different. And how many of us proactively do that? I think that's what we need to start doing.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess if we talk a bit, Cheryl, about the kind of symptoms of having lost your human, if I think back to the earliest signs of it with me, it was just, I think the first thought I had was, is this really what life is supposed to be about? Like, is this hamster wheel of kind of getting up at ridiculous o'clock, giving everything to work, being exhausted on the weekend, is that really all it is? That was the earliest sign with me. And then the more I think I kind of pushed that down, the more it then translated into just complete physical, emotional exhaustion. And it was almost like I was just kind of detaching from my life to try and kind of make do, just exist to the next break, in this hope that actually something was going to change, but nothing did soon enough. So I think I was really living in a way that was kind of seeing everything as a project that was going to end, and somehow missing the fact that actually, no, this is the corporate career, the life that you've built for yourself. So that's what it felt like for me. Loads of brain fog, so many physical symptoms in my body of being out of alignment, but I didn't even notice until they were at that point that was kind of screaming, take you out of things. That's what it was like for me. How about you?
You're just a nicer person than me. That's the difference.
Tell it like it is.
You're so lovely, because yours was so nice. Mine, and God, I can't not swear, by the way, because it is who I am. Mine was pure fucking rage. That's what mine was. So leading up to it, I was just angry at the whole world. I didn't think people worked hard enough. I didn't think they worked long enough. I just think you're just not good enough at what you do, and I'm having to do everything. So I was like this martyr to the world. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, that's a bit awkward, because I honestly thought I was holding the world up with what I did. And I thought, I was so passionate about my work. I worked in financial services, and at the time it was in remediation. So we were remediating investments and pensions, which, don't get me wrong, I think money's really important. You don't mess with people's money. So I've always been passionate about getting people what they should have had in the first place. So I was an absolute out and out advocate for the job I did. But by God, did I if somebody had put a cross out, I would have hung myself on it and been this sort of whole martyr for it. So for me, I was angry, I was annoyed at people, I was frustrated, I was let down. I was judgmental. I can say these things now, that's not how I felt at the time, but I was judgmental. I started to become, as well, the toxic person in the room, because I was annoyed at everybody. So we'd sit down for a meeting and I'd already be annoyed at everybody. Which I'd think, oh, it'll go the same way it's gone before, that you'll all turn up not prepared. I know what I need to do. You're wasting my time because I've got things to do. So I just had this whole sort of resentment about people because I didn't think they weren't good enough at what they did. And it alienated me from people as well, because I was that arsehole in the room. And don't get me wrong, I actually was really good at what I did. So I was often right. I was often doing really well, but it didn't really sort of ingratiate respectful, honest, open, kind, caring relationships with people. If you were on my team, it did. I looked after my own, but if you weren't, you were done. So I was just like an angry person throughout the whole of my burnout, blaming other people as well. I used to wake up at 4 a.m, and sometimes, and this, you won't believe this, but and sometimes we'd go to bed between like 1 o'clock in the morning. So that was how awake I was, and out of the office working. Thank God we had a 24-hour office, because that used to be what I did around the clock. And I blamed everyone else's incompetence for that, rather than my need to be needed, my need to be significant, my need to be connected to people, and when you look underneath it all, it's the human connection that was missing for me. So I was trying to find it in a different way. So that was the symptoms for me, just pure rage, pure anger. And what tipped it for me was when I started to get really angry at my family. That wasn't okay anymore, when I was snapping at the people I loved, and I immediately went to the doctors. Poor people that I'd snapped at previously didn't get that, but everyone else did. And I just think, again, pattern behaviors. So if it keeps happening, if you keep seeing the same things, if you're getting snappy, if you're getting annoyed at people, for me, it was I needed to start opening my eyes and paying attention to those repeat behaviors that I had, not other people had.
Yeah. And if any of this resonates, feel free to kind of chip in the chat box. It's always useful to know when things do and don't resonate.
The only thing I will say on that is, I use the adjective angry. Don't get me wrong, there was frustration, there was disappointment. So it's those things as well. And it's hard to know whether it's your environment or whether it's you. Are you just working for a shit company or are you the problem? That's often the difficulty as well. Yeah. What's the issue there? So Emma and I use a set of adjectives. They don't have to be the same adjectives of you, but it's a feeling of, this isn't right. There's something not right here. Yeah. However you describe it.
And I think quite often the truth is it's normally a mixture of your behaviours in the environment that you're in, just leading to it not being in alignment. And for some people, the environment is super toxic, and that coupled with actually the fact that they're a good human who wants to do great things, cares about others, can just create the perfect storm.
One of the challenges you've got with being a good human in a toxic environment is your addiction to saving it and fixing it.
Yeah.
And then you've got to ask yourself, why is it that you feel like you're the savior of a toxic environment? Because that's almost being addicted to pain. So that's another interesting savior complex we have.
Yeah, 100%. And I think looking back, when that conversation we had around environment is so important, I was literally in a burnout environment as someone who was burning out. I couldn't even imagine that there was another way of doing things. What I've learned since is actually just by choosing to be in the right conversations, the right communities, you actually see that other things are possible. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, you can make them possible for yourself. So this year, for example, I just decided there was a certain way that I wanted to be in business. I didn't want to be in that kind of, the guru space where people have funnels, they have lots of ad spend. I wanted a more human connection in my business. So I was like, there must be people who do it this way. Lo and behold, found a community of people who are amazing, who completely operate in that way. And it's just like osmosis now. The things I wanted to see happen in my business are happening in a way that feels really good, because that's the environment that I'm in, the conversations that I hear every single day. Mm-hmm. So that was the moment for me that I was like, there's something that we need in this space for the human conversations around business, whether it's a leader in the corporate world or entrepreneurs, contractors, just that place that you can go where you feel like, okay, there's people who have a similar ethos to me. It is okay to be a human in business, and actually it's a strategic advantage.
It absolutely is a strategic advantage. You're spot on.
All right. So I guess the vision that Cheryl and I have now is everything that we've talked around, being a human in business, that we actually create a space to have those conversations on a deep basis, because we've both been posting for some time now around these things, which has an effect to a degree, but some of these conversations are a lot deeper. You can give information in a post, but it's very difficult to get into the space of transformation, really having a community just around a post on LinkedIn. We've done some lives, which are helpful, but I think really this is the moment that to really serve people and to do this work on a much deeper basis, that we actually need to create some proper community and structure around this. And when we were kind of brainstorming together, the title Human Business Leaders kept coming up for us, because this really is about bringing your full human to work and just generally to life. Why do we change who we are in a business context when actually that is the thing that's such a strategic advantage to the business, having us showing up in our full human?
And more than just being human, being adult human, which sounds like a really weird thing to say. I'm sure most of us don't think we're walking around as 5-year-olds, but actually all we ever are is grown-up versions of the injured child that we were back then, and then we take that into the workplace with us. Something I often see is, and this is in so many areas of my life, is when you talk about people how you communicate at work. Often we communicate, like if you'd fallen out with your husband or your wife, something. I'm not saying that we all sulk, by the way, none of us are sulkers, but sometimes some of us sulk. And I find that happens in the business place too. And what my vision was how do we start getting people to be able to open up, be able to heal what's happened to them in the past, be able to talk courageously about what hurts them, what they love, what they don't love, where their boundaries are. Like the work we've just done, Emma, on boundaries. Emma was mentioning earlier some corporate work we've done on boundary setting. She's never a done job either. These things you don't learn it once and then you've got it and off you go. That's you graduated from the boundary masterclass. You have to keep doing it because other things will come into your life and challenge them. So we just wanted to be able, the vision for me is being able to share all of our experiences, all of our learning, all of our coaching and mentoring that we can in a community where people can go out and do something with it and be able to come back in and go, that didn't work, or that felt really uncomfortable for me, or that felt, but just having this network of people connected, human, adult, brave, courageous, all the things that you ever wanted to be. That's what I want us to be able to do here. And when we've talked about this, exactly like you're saying, Emma, we've touched on this on our social media. You're just scratching the surface. It's just like and we know we are, don't we? Because there's only so much you can do. But I want to be able to have a connection with people where they can tell us, no, this doesn't work for me, or this feels too scary for me, I can't do this today, or what if this happens? And for being able to just talk these things through, but just create that community, that training environment where people can feel safe. That's needed. That's my vision.
100%. And the thing I love about the concept of a community as well is the things that we will pour into it from a kind of sharing what we know, but then also the fact that people can share with each other. There's going to be really strong business relationships that grow from this, because when you've got those people that you just inherently trust, you've seen them do the work, you've seen their transformation, it's so much easier to do business together. So for example, with me, based on my corporate experiences, it took me a long time to trust and to want to collaborate in my own business. It was like, oh, here's my little thing that I can keep the way I want it to be. And then from going through that experience with you, Cheryl, where we were together for 6 months, highs and lows, suddenly it was like, okay, it's really easy for me to collaborate with Cheryl because I've seen all the sides, the highs, the lows. And I think there's definitely something in that from a business perspective as well, whether it's kind of, that person who can help you find the right company for your next move, or you find that provider that you just know they're running a business that you can inherently trust. That's huge.
Yeah, there's nothing to add on that. Yeah, it's I keep saying the really boring same thing, but it's community. And especially right now, especially whilst we've been in lockdown, especially whilst we're remote, we need to come together, and I just think for every one action that we take as individuals, the ripple effects of that to those around us, and showing people that are in your business around you, or if you're self-employed, a contractor, employed, whatever it is, showing those people that you have the courage to embrace humanity and put that at the heart and soul of everything you do. You are teaching people every single day, whether you realize it or not, and you're teaching people from what you do, but you're also teaching people what you don't do. So being a conscious narrator, a conscious designer of your own life, and in doing so you will create something so immaculate for other people that they want to be involved and they want to be part of your world. But if you don't, then you just keep doing more of the same. So I just want to make a change. I just want to collaborate.
All right, so that's probably the moment to, I guess, get a bit more specific about, at least at this stage, the kind of founding stage, what this is going to look like. And why don't I put this in the chat box? So, ta-da, human business leaders. So what we are talking about at this stage is really a founding community of people who we will get together. Facebook seems the easiest way to manage this kind of thing. So we'll be in a community together on Facebook where literally week in, week out, Cheryl and I are pouring in the things that we know to be effective in this work, and really setting the scene for people to actually bring what is the stuff that they want to be talking about and how we can support that with our skill sets. Something that we see definitely growing over time, but in the early stages will be quite an intimate community of people really getting to know each other well as we do all of this work together. So it will look like bite-size lessons, teaching lives on a regular basis, that space that you can go and, you know, there's no judgment, but equally, if you want that accountability, but perhaps you're working on setting up a boundary in your life and business, you know that there's that group of people who've got your back and can call you out on it and be like, Cheryl, did you do this week? Or of course, and you always do. So really collaborative, really kind of founding member vibe is what we've talked about. So at this stage, the group of people who want to be there giving us live feedback, telling us what you want, as well as the agenda that we're bringing to it. I'll pause there.
The only thing I was going to say about this is because I've joined a number of these myself, and I'm always really tentative. Would you believe someone like me is always really tentative at the start and doesn't say a great deal, but actually it's true. So I always almost lurk in the background of these things, and the lessons that I've always learned is don't lurk, get involved, because especially when something starts up and it's new like this and there's less people involved, you can essentially get coaching coaching from someone like Emma and me who've been there and done it, and from a community of other people that have got their own experiences. It's a really valuable thing to do, to just get involved and have that exposure to different networks, different industries, different character types, bounce ideas. And some of it, I mean, Emma, if we'd not done that, we wouldn't have met and we wouldn't do all the things.
No, I was thinking this morning, actually, what I invested in that mastermind was worth paying just to have the connection with you, regardless of everything that it did for my business. I meant to say that to you before we came on today, but it's true.
Such a love lesson. Thank you. I feel the same. But all jokes aside, I genuinely do. And we joined that for 6 months, but we were connected almost immediately outside of the group, and we kept. And actually, I'm going away with that group this weekend. So I'm actually going to Spain with that group that we joined. So it shows like the community that you can have, where you build resilience with each other and support and connection. But I just think, in terms of you and I do an awful lot on LinkedIn, and we do a lot of these social group, these sort of teaching groups. And again, we do it from just what we think is necessary. What this community will be about is, yes, what we think is necessary, but also there'll be interaction from the community that says, something I'm really struggling with isn't this. Can you do anything about it? Can you help us with it? So it's adaptive and responsive to needs in the moment. And you'll be really surprised that, I mean, I'm not, because I see it in the job that I do, and Emma, I think you're the same, how connected our needs often are. So when I have one client say one thing, the rest of the week, the clients seem to have the same, different words, different scenarios, but same issue, because we are connected as humanity. There is a collective consciousness. So you learn and you grow as a team, as a unit of people. And then I think, if you'd have said to me however many years ago, would I be doing this? I would have been like, absolutely not. I earn a great deal of money. I don't need to go off and change anything. But because of the connections I made outside of my work environment, it opened up so many more doors I never thought were possible. I couldn't have imagined where my life has gone, all because I joined something like this. It's changed my world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels really meaningful to kind of create that space for others when you've been in ones that have helped you. And so our vision is this is something that will grow over time. We've made it kind of a no-brainer investment level, just because we want it to be a place that's accessible to a big community of people who are in business, whether they're employed, contractors, have their own business. There's a place for everyone who just has that desire to.
Still no knobheads though, Emma. We have got like and the reason I say this, I mean, I make a joke of it, but I mean it actually. The reason being is because some of the things that I know that I can coach, and certainly so can you, Emma, and we can teach and train, and if it got into the wrong hands, it could be misused. So being able to read someone's body language and being able to read their energy and know, what they're saying and how they're feeling before they even open their mouth. If you're a knobhead, you can use that in all the wrong ways. So I am really guarded on who I work with in that sense. And this is no different for me. If I find there's anyone in the group that for me is manipulating or abusing or just using this information in the wrong way, then for me, they don't belong to this group. This has to be a safe, kind, empowering, connected place. That's hugely important.
Yeah.
So stand by my no knobhead policy.
Yeah, I just don't think we attract them. I certainly don't. I haven't had to have that conversation with anyone who's approached me about working with me. So long may that continue.
Like, all I know is I did attract them, so now I don't, but not anymore.
Okay. So I think that's the main thing really that we wanted to say. So it's there's two ways of joining Human Business Leaders as it stands today. As a founding member, you can go month by month, cancel it at any point before the next payment, or if it's something that, like us, you know that you're in this for the long term and you just want to make that commitment to yourself, we've got an annual option as well that I think saves you 2 months worth of the fee. So whatever feels great for you. From mine and Cheryl's perspective, this is something that we're committed to for the long term. We're really comfortable if it grows organically over time. It's about attracting the right people that want to have these conversations rather than creating a huge community from the get-go and compromising quality. So I know we'll still be talking about this for years and years to come, which is why I wanted to do it with in a collaborative way and not on my own. It's just much more fun.
We can't talk about human connection if there's just one of us.
Exactly.
Not a great human connection. I suppose, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I suppose I would be interested, because we've talked about the symptoms of working in isolation, and we've talked about burnout because that's our personal experience of it. It doesn't have to be burnout. It has to be, because burnout is when you break. But I think so many people are living in a period of almost sustainably not burning out, but on the edge of it, if that makes sense. So you go on holiday or you take a break, and then you sort of you recover some of yourself, but then you just start topping it back up again. That's why I used to take 4 holidays a year, because if I hadn't, I would have broken earlier. Maybe I should have broken earlier, if that makes sense, because it was the best thing that ended up happening to me. But I think people are almost in denial of how difficult their circumstances are. And if you're needing to take a holiday to recover rather than just to enjoy a holiday, then maybe you're in an emotional burnout state. But I don't, so like I say, I'm not asking anyone to have to speak out or whatever, but when we've done these things before, people do. But talking about the symptoms, talking about our vision, talking about any solutions that we're thinking of, is there, if anybody did want to speak or contribute anything, it would be wonderful if you did. If not, don't feel obliged to either.
Open floor.
With Luke.
Yes, hey, Luke.
Hi.
Hey there.
Sorry. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Very well. Thank you. I think your point, well, firstly, I love this idea immensely. So we've obviously sending feedback loads. But your point just now about this kind of like almost semi-state of not quite burnout, but living on that edge. You kind of walking that tightrope, and you always take that kind of time out to try and reset yourself. There have been times, this sounds a bit dark, but there have been times where in previous contracts where I've kind of stood at the train station and thought, what if I got on the train going the opposite direction? What would actually happen? Who would care? And what would be the outcome if I just got on a train to Cornwall, for example, stood at Slough Station in the morning and just didn't turn up for work?
I'll meet you there.
And yeah, exactly. And that overwhelming sense of that actually is the right thing to do. You should definitely do that, but you don't, because you're conditioned to going to work, right? You follow the line, you toe the line, you think, I'll just get on with it, even though everything is saying, that's a really bad idea. Don't do it. Go the other way. Take the time out. And we just don't understand it enough. And there's not enough knowledge and understanding in businesses about the effects that has on people. And you're right, Emma, like you sit on the train, I've sat on the train this week, 2 days already, and you look at people and you're like, that's not going to end well. Right, they're going to be in a bad way, because you can just see the nervousness, the frustrations, angry at like, oh God, we've waited an extra 2 seconds at the train stop, which means I'm going to be late. 2 seconds later into Paddington, come on, so it's something that's just not addressed, in my experience.
And I think sometimes people don't even burn out from that. I think that's just their whole life experience. And then when they get to retirement, they don't know how to manage retirement because they've been so tightly wound their whole life. They don't know how to connect to their children. So I actually think sometimes that's men more than women in that situation, where they don't know how to reconnect with their children because they're this angry, process-driven, must, should person. And they think that's normal. That's a scary thing. They've normalized it.
Well, exactly. And again, that's a whole different subject, though, about the whole, expectations of men and women in working life. Let's not get into that now, but you know what I mean? But you're right. That's the thing. You get to that point where you can just see it. And I've actually got friends whose parents have exactly that, have retired, and every day is constantly busy finding something to do because they can't get out of that routine. It is,
they get depressed.
The other way, completely the other way. They do absolutely nothing. They just think that life has ended, so to speak. So through no education, just hasn't happened. We don't businesses don't tend to operate that way.
And so I worked in a professional services company. I worked at two of the big four, and it's partnerships. So if you can't become a partner at one of the big four, I think after the age of 45, actually because of your buy-in. So you've got to be able to be there long enough to buy in. But they normally like to start retiring you into your early to mid 50s. And actually, when you're a partner, and if you're a partner, you can be earning like millions of pounds a year. So these are the senior people. So, and if you look at how those people are being treated, the significance of those people and how they're being treated, they go through serious psychological coaching and therapy to get them ready for retirement because they know it's needed. But what does everyone else get?
No, exactly, nothing.
What attention and connection do they get? And that's what we need. So whether it's retirement or whether it's just being able to look at your life through a whole new lens and know that you're already enough, that you don't need to hurt yourself to be able to evidence that you're doing what you need to do. And just actually, in putting that boundary and that permission in place, you'll get so much more respect anyway. So you don't have to burn out to get that respect. It's already there. You've just got to have the courage to say it and expect it. But nobody gets taught that, exactly like you're saying. Who tells you that? Unless you demand more and go and get someone that will.
I think maybe what's even worse is it being said like there is a community or a way of doing it in work and it not actually being followed up. I find that's probably, for me, a worse situation because you have an expectation that you've got an ability to reach out and people will be there to sort of support everybody else, and it's not real. And I've seen that as well, and that to me is, demoralizing is not the right word, right? Yeah, thank you.
It's lies.
That fucks you up completely, because it almost gives, if you're in a toxic situation and it is just that, at least you know what it is. Whereas if you're in oh no, we've got these, we want to look after you and you can come and speak to us about anything, and and then suddenly you do that, and the next minute you lose your job, right? Hang on a second, what happened there, right?
And that's the other thing. So, and actually, what you talk about there, Luke, a really significant thing, because I've been in those situations where they put on a smiley face to everybody, but they're actually smiling with fangs, sugar-coated fangs. And what the main thing that I learned, and it's perfect that you said this, is self-sufficiency in that situation. And how do you learn how to manage that? So once you've worked them out, because like you say, once you've worked out it's a toxic environment, you know how to deal, don't you? But it still can hurt. So how do you get to a position where you're satisfying your own human needs in your own way through either a community outside or through your own internal mechanisms? And once you've done that and you can actually approach these people in a different way, they will start turning up, or you'll leave, and you'll get something better. But it's how do we almost not become dependent upon people that know no better than us and have had no more training or skill set than us to be able to satisfy our needs? How do we satisfy our own? And there's ways of doing that as well. There's things that we can do.
Yeah. Yeah,
designing is one of them, but
no, I'll be quiet now.
no,
No, that was great. And
Sorry.
the thing that changed for me is I think I'd been living in a way that was kind of focusing on life being out the other side of the work that I was doing. It was almost like, oh, I'll do all of this stuff kind of down the line. And then I just realized that I didn't want to live that way. I actually want to get to the point that I'm old and grey, and I'm so proud of everything that I've done and the life that I've lived. And so I just decided to live it more intentionally, which I know sounds a bit happy clappy, but there's ways that you can do that when you have that mindset that actually I'm living every day and want to have lots of lifing every day. Things start to change.
You know why I laughed when you said that, by the way, is because I was the same, but mine was through pure vanity. Mine was, I worked out one day that women, when they're stressed, age quicker and show that they're aging quicker than men. And I was furious. I was like, hang on. So not only am I going to be stressed and I'm going to start looking stressed, and my male counterpart won't, but I will. And it made me really angry. I thought, I don't want to get old and grey before my time. So I need to find a way that I don't look old and, because I was getting haggard because I was so worked up and my skin looked a mess. So that is actually what started me researching, how do I help not look old and haggard before my time, because I'm under so much pressure and stress. I think we just got a message, by the way, so I don't know.
Yeah, from Judith. So I suppose one related problem to what you were highlighting is that at some organisations, even if you ask or try to set boundaries, people above you can try to put you in performance measures and punish you for attempting to set those boundaries. How would you handle that? Oh, that's a big topic.
It's a big topic, but it's actually, think about we've got a similar question in our boundaries masterclass that we were doing.
Hugely, yeah. That's what we've just literally done a full session program in a corporate, but it was spanned over 8 weeks, talking about all of this stuff, because boundaries goes deep. There's often where we don't have a boundary, there's stuff within our personality that goes right back to childhood. That's the reason that we're not enforcing that boundary. So it's one of those things you can look at on a surface level and go, I'm going to decide just to work these hours, or you can do much deeper around, I guess, the secondary gain that you've experienced from not having that boundary.
It's always like a need, a human need. But with this particular one here, I think this is a really good one, because we've all been there before. For all I'm talking about, and we're here talking about human connection and emotions and lots of different things such as that, I'm a real process and documented process person. So I'm a bit of a geek in that sense as well. So one of the things that I find when we're in a performance management situation, and just for the record, you are always in a performance management situation because you are always expected to perform to a set of criteria. Where the breakdown comes in is if you don't know what your performance measures were. So either they weren't clear, they weren't measurable, or they weren't communicated. So my old job way back when was, and I used to have the nickname of Axeman, because I was sent in to sack people, or I was sent in to shut functions down or departments down. But I only ever did it with the human in mind. So this was actually part of where my real humanity and really feeling it always came in. I wasn't so kind to myself, but I was in this sense. What you've always got to do is make sure that when somebody's communicated what their expectations are of you, that they've been understood. And that's on you as much as it is on them when they're communicating them to you. So if you don't know what your job is, if somebody hasn't explained it to you, or if someone's putting barriers in place for you being able to achieve your job, first and foremost, you need to have it documented so you can go back to that every time and go, this is what your expectation is of me, right? So on a Monday to a Friday, this is what I'm meant to do. Scope creep, as I call it, because I'm a project person, but it's also role creep. The amount of people that I speak to, when you look at what their job is and then you look at what they're actually doing, and so what you're meant to be getting paid for compared to what you actually do on a day-to-day are nowhere like what they should be. That's part of your problem. So you've actually got to be able to go back and get back to, this is my job, is this what you want me to do? Yes or no? And document these conversations. Have the courage to say, because I want to make sure that we're both safe in this environment, I'm going to document it. So I'm going to just follow through that you've told me that I'm meant to do X, Y, and Z by this time. And these are the blockers for me being able to do it. And this is what I need to be successful. Do you agree to that? So it's all communication, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Clear.
I was going to say on communication, because you can say the same thing in two different ways, and one can be receptive, other ones people can see you potentially as a blocker, pushing back. So communication is huge part of boundaries that is definitely one of the things I'm sure we'll go deeper in on.
But that's me just giving a quick answer to it on that sense. But again, these are the things that I would like to get closer to, because it's really easy for me to sit there and go, you just do this, Judith, you just go in and do that. But one of the things that I do, and certainly with my coach anyway, but what we would be doing as part of this community is telling people how to prepare to have those conversations, because it's terrifying. And especially if you think, you putting in a boundary, people assume a boundary has to be an argument, or it has to be a problem, a barrier, but it's trying to find a boundary that is workable for you and for your business. Because we could all say, well, my boundary is that I only want to work on Monday, so I'm not going to turn up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Guess what? It doesn't work. You can't do that. So it has to be mutually acceptable. But that's, again, being able to have that conversation where you can negotiate, and that's something that you can learn and practice. But it's not something I could probably cover in 9 minutes.
Yeah. And I'm conscious Andy had his hand up as well. Andy, do you want to unmute?
I was just going to make a minor point about, hello, everybody. Sorry, should have said that first. And great to see you, Luke. As we talk about shifting boundaries, I think in my experience, I used to work for a large American company, and by and large, they looked after me pretty well, including when I had a period of, I was off work for 3 months when I was ill. But they did have some fairly disastrous management practices, gated reviews, and I felt I wanted to learn how to become a good manager, and their whole process I felt would actively prevent me from doing so, and I couldn't have the conversations with them about this. I tried. I was diplomatic and so on, but I think with the boundary setting thing, it's a case of when, I was managing teams, I was managing people who were also managing teams, and they'd every now and again I'd try and have a conversation, or someone would come to me and say, okay, what do I need to do this? And I'd have to really think, and it put a lot of pressure on me as the manager to get their job right. And I think that's one of the areas where I wanted to learn to be good. So as you approach your manager with these sorts of questions, as you said, the example you gave earlier, Cheryl, was I need to do X, Y, and Z by this time. These are my blockers. Do you agree? It's really helping them have some of the accountability for it, and it's not all on your shoulders. And I think with a lot of the things, the things that you've covered today, community particularly, so many things struck a chord with me, and it's about collectively sharing the accountability and the responsibility, because it's an awful thing to think, I'm in this job, I've got all the accountability and none of the control. And it's a lovely place. Conversely, we think I've got all the control, none of the accountability, and it's actually awful to be in either of those two, because you will at some point suffer greatly. But I think it's a great thing, that just the point I wanted to make is it's a great thing if you can share accountability with the people so-called above you and below you as well.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that, Andy. And you're so right around where you don't have control and you don't have accountability. Both of those things are factors that, when they happen over the longer term, can push people to burnout when they're out of sync. People have this thing that burnout is always about overworking. There's so many things that lead to it. Values not being aligned,
exactly,
not
right,
having
exactly
control.
Right.
Yeah.
Being accountable for something for many people, myself included, is a motivating factor.
Yeah.
But you can only have it when you have the control, and when you have the education and the value structure and the means to attain those values. And otherwise, it's very easy to take, particularly when you're young as well, and you want to start. I was sort of horrified by Cheryl's tales of having to make a certain position sort of by your mid-40s, so they can get the mileage out of you, so they can retire you by the time you're in your early-ish 50s. That's my age now, and I'm just getting going. And I think it's, as a And I thought I did really, really well as a young engineer and a young manager. I thought you try and take on responsibility and accountability. You sort of lap it up and you think, yeah, give me all that. I'll have that. I'll make all of your lives easier. And then you think, well, I've made all of their lives easier, and mine's got correspondingly more difficult. And it's just one of the things we need to take care of.
And throughout when you've been speaking, Andy, the word commitment, you know, when you're saying about it's not all your accountability, they have some as well. It's almost like a mutual commitment to one another.
Absolutely.
It's not just one direction. It goes both ways. And the way I lead and the way I've always led, and you may have heard this sort of definition like servant leadership, it's always like the way I saw it was that if I was the leader or the manager or whatever, I was there to facilitate your success. That was my sole purpose.
Yeah.
And
I can agree more.
And that's it. But I think so many new and young managers are coming up, and the only people they've got ahead of them is the person that the shoes that they're about to fill. And whoever taught us how to serve others and how to lead ourselves in a way that was positive and healthy, and that would encourage other people to want to follow in our footsteps. It's all about sort of compressing and constraining, and that's what we need to do. That's what we need to change. But I don't see any of this management experience or training, or not enough of it anyway, taking place. And it's got to change. It's just got to change. It will change.
Yeah, and so one of the things we've talked about doing as a kind of a training experience within the community is that sense of actually when you're transitioning between roles as well, the kind of concept of what got you here won't necessarily get you there. There's so much that we need to work on in terms of how we work, our mindset at different levels as well, for it to be sustainable, for it to be human and a win-win all around. So there's just so many ways this conversation can go. And so, Cheryl, anything that you want to add at this stage? I think it's probably 3 minutes to go, probably time to start wrapping up.
There's nothing I want to add in terms of on top of what we've said. Just to reiterate, the human business leaders for me is a commitment and a community, and it's a wave of positivity. I want to create a place of goodness where we learn best practice, but always connected back to your human, and where you look at your role and you can see the human in it, where you look at your relationships and you see the human in it. And it starts and it ends with that for me. And I just want to be able to create a whole wave of positivity in this sense, that no one needs to feel lonely or isolated again in the workplace, because we've got each other's backs and we create positivity for others by creating it for ourselves. So join the community. That's it.
Yeah, and I think it's going to grow really organically, because the first people in there we know are going to be amazing humans, and we're going to have amazing experiences, conversations together, and just these things just grow by osmosis, because you end up talking to your friends about them and they grow. So yeah, if it's something that you've heard the conversation today just at kind of a heart level and a logic level, it makes sense, we would love to have you there. And we'll send a note out later today with the replay of this, links to join, but essentially you just go to humanbusinessleaders.co.uk and you'll see the details of it there. So we're excited.
Yeah, let's make a difference. All right, thank you everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all soon.
See you on the internet. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.